Most people think nonprofits run on donations. That's not true for most of the sector. 71% of nonprofit revenue comes from program services. That means fees, tuition, patient charges, admissions, not donations. This video is for nonprofit founders and fundraisers who want to understand how money actually flows at scale. Not the version you hear at conferences, the version that explains why some organizations grow and others stay stuck. I've spent over 20 years in global development. I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars across government contracts, foundation grants, and individual giving. I've watched nonprofits make the same mistakes over and over, and I've seen the ones that break through do something that most people misunderstand. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how fundraising actually changes as nonprofits grow. I'll show you why diversification often keeps you small, and I'll explain what the biggest organizations optimize for that no one talks about. Let's start with something most people get wrong. Most people think nonprofits run on donations. That's not true for most of the sector. 71% of nonprofit revenue comes from program services. That means fees, tuition, patient charges, admissions, not donations. The majority of money flowing through nonprofits come from selling services or winning government contracts. Fundraising for a huge slice of the sector is closer to procurement than it is to charity. This matters because it changes what fundraising means at different stages. When starting out, fundraising is about selling belief. You don't have proof yet. You don't have outcomes. You're asking people to trust you before you've delivered anything. And at this stage, relationships beat systems every single time. Founder-led major gifts work, even if major means $500. Small donors give validation more than volume. Unless your cause naturally fits mass empathy. In-kind support matters here too. Free office space, donated legal help, software discounts. These things substitute for cash burn. Seed grants can work if you have legitimacy signals, a credible board, credible partners, a credible plan, but grants at this stage are catalytic, not sustaining. Top organizations do something different early on. They behave like trust-building enterprises, not like charities asking for favors. They create proof in ways funders recognize. Pilots, outcomes, distribution partners, governance. They don't wait until they feel ready. They professionalize early. Once you hit early growth, the game changes. You have your first repeatable program. You have staff, you have systems. Your biggest risk now is fragility. One funder, one channel, one person, one event. If any of those breaks, you're in trouble. This is where most nonprofits start diversifying. Individual giving becomes the most flexible form of cash if you can build it. Foundations fund new programs or expansion narratives. Corporate support shows up, but it's smaller than people expect. Events convert social energy into money and contacts, but they're labor heavy, and the net results are completely unpredictable. Here's the hidden problem at this stage. Donor retention is weak across the entire sector. Retention rates hover in the high teens. That means most nonprofits are stuck on a treadmill. They're constantly acquiring donors instead of compounding their relation. They had foundation grants working. 70 to 80% of revenue came from family foundations. But leadership felt they needed to diversify. So they tried everything at once. Small donor appeals, a volunteer-run gala, sporadic corporate asks, earned income workshops, priced too low to even matter. Within 18 months, they merged under a larger organization. Not because the mission failed, but revenue declined. They didn't focus. Hey, this is Gretchen. If you liked what you heard today and you would like to learn more about building resilient financial organizations, you can find more value in the description below by clicking on the Nexus Impact Spotlight. There's lots of information that you can use and actually apply yourself today. Top organizations do something different here. They build renewal mechanics, ongoing value, belonging, proof, identity. They don't live on endless acquisition. They professionalize fundraising operations earlier than feels comfortable. They pick one or two channels and they go deep. Now, here's where it gets counterintuitive. Once you hit scale, diversification stops being the answer. Over 90% of nonprofits with 50 million or more in annual revenue raise the bulk of their money from a single revenue category: government, program revenue, or philanthropy. It wasn't a mix. One dominant source. This is the opposite of what most people think and are taught. Diversification is sold as safety, but at scale, concentration is what wins. And here's why. Concentration lets you build specialized excellence, capabilities, compliance, staffing, systems. Every funding type is a different business model, right? If you're running multiple models, you're running multiple businesses, and you can't be world class at every single one of them. At scale, fundraising becomes procurement and delivery, contracts, compliance, unit economics, or it becomes major gifts and institutional philanthropy. Fewer, bigger decisions, or it becomes brand and distribution. Mass market donor acquisition only works when your message fits mass empathy. They started with a messy revenue mix: 40% foundation grants, 25% small government grants, 20% events, 15% other. They were exhausted. They decided to pick one engine that already showed signs of scale: government contracts. Over 6 years, revenue grew from 900,000 to 14 million. 80% plus of funding became multi-year contracts. Cash flow stabilized, staff turnover dropped. They became the default provider in their region. Only after that did they start building individual giving and going after larger unrestricted foundation grants. The sequence mattered. Diversification became easier after they concentrated. They think it's a communications problem. It's not. It's a relationship design problem. Fundraisers assume retention improves if they send better thank you emails or share more impact stories or segment their lists more cleverly. But retention is driven by three things: clarity about the role the donor plays, evidence of the impact of their continued support, and patience with structure while saying no to noise. You can't be everything to every donor. Stick to your mission and you must align to it. When you do that, donors stay. When you don't, they churn. Now let's talk about something most people don't know exists: donor advised funds. DAFs are a parallel banking system for philanthropy. They alter how quickly money reaches you, how visible donors are, and how funder preferences spread. Large nonprofits treat DAFs as an upstream channel. Donor intent gets warehoused and later deployed. This rewards organizations that are easiest to select, easiest to justify, and easiest to signal to peers. If you're not legible to DAF platforms, you're invisible to a huge pool of capital. Here's another thing people get wrong: events. Events can be financially irrational, but strategically useful. And a lot of nonprofits learn this the hard way. Events look successful, but once you count real costs, they're often met weak. Costs to raise $1 can be extreme compared to other channels. So why do top organizations still do them? Because events are donor pipeline infrastructure, not revenue engines. They produce social proof, introduction, status, and dynamics. Those things convert into major gifts later. They can also be a media product if you have distribution. The trap is confusing a great night with a great economic engine. Here's something else most people don't think about: compliance. If you solicit donations, you trigger state level registration and reporting requirements. Approximately 40 states require registration before you can solicit residents. At scale, compliance capacity becomes a fundraising advantage. It explains where and how you can solicit, advertise, and partner. And top organizations professionalize legal and finance infrastructure early. What looks like overhead is often the growth engine: data, compliance, systems, and talent. So what are the top nonprofits actually optimizing for? 4 things. First, a single dominant engine that compounds diversification can be a survival strategy. Concentration is a scale strategy. Second, repeatability, not heroics. They systematize renewal. They systematize upgrading small donors to mid donors to major donors. They systematize institutional pipelines, foundation cycles, government cycles. And third, legibility to the funding source. Different engines reward different proof. Government rewards compliance and delivery. Foundations reward theory of change, measurements, leadership credibility, and mass donors reward emotional clarity and brand trust. Earned income rewards unit economics and operational excellence. And fourth, the right kind of overhead. Donors want efficiency signals. Organizations need capacity. At scale, what looks like overhead is often the growth engine. Here's the most contrarian take I can give you. The biggest nonprofits don't win by being the best charities. They win by becoming the best distribution businesses inside the constraints of their primary revenue engine. Mission is not the main constraint at scale. The constraint is the ability to repeatedly convert scarce attention into reliable cash, and then reliably convert cash into outcomes that satisfy the funder. Diversification is frequently a story nonprofits tell themselves to feel safe. In practice, diversification often means running multiple business models badly. The scale winners pick one model and become world class at it. The sector's bifurcating. One side is fee for service and government funded operators. Fundraising for them is closer to contracting and delivery. The other side's brand driven philanthropic giants, right? Fundraising for them looks like media, identity, and trust at scale. Small donors are emotionally central, but economically fragile. They're numerous, but retention struggles mean many nonprofits can't compound donor value. If you accept this frame, how top nonprofits fundraise becomes less about tactics and more about which economic machine they're building, then how ruthlessly they align operations, proof, and messaging to that machine. Habitat didn't scale because people care about housing. Many nonprofits have strong missions. Habitat scaled because it built a clear, repeatable way for people to get involved. Volunteers weren't just helping out, they were being introduced to the organization through hands on work. Churches weren't occasional donors, they were reliable partners with simple, repeatable ways to participate. Habitat restores weren't just a source of income, they kept Habitat visible in the entire community. They gave people an easy first step that often led to deeper involvement. And Habitat for Humanity focused on making it easy for people to find them, take a first step, and move closer over time, because that pathway was clear. Giving money became a natural next step, not a hard sell. So here's what this means for you. If you're starting out, focus on trust and proof. Don't try to build systems before you have relationships. If you're in early growth, pick one or two channels and go deep. Don't diversify just because it feels safer. If you're scaling, concentrate. Pick the revenue engine that fits your mission and capabilities. Build specialized excellence around it. If you're already large, optimize your repeatability and legibility. Make it easy for funders to say yes. Make it easy for donors to stay. And make it easy for your team to execute. That's how top nonprofits fundraise at every stage of growth. What's one funding mistake you've seen nonprofits make that costs them growth? Drop it in the comments if you want to go deeper on nonprofit strategy and revenue growth. Watch the next video on this topic. Thanks for watching.